various people across the random spectrums of time, and indeed the multiverse. I am Alexander Gordon Johansson. This is probably gonna be a long one. So, because it's gonna be a long one, I'm gonna end this as a nice short stinger so that I can then do the long rambly thing without affecting the render time too badly. So, we're gonna be talking about what I think I termed on Facebook sort of patriarchal momentum of sort of conditioning of misogyny within society. And yeah, I'm gonna be explaining what the fuck I mean by that and stuff. Well, now, just, yeah. Hi. So, I've noticed this phenomenon before, and I called it sort of the patriarchal momentum. You know, this problem of the momentum. But I think I now finally understand how and why it happens, at least enough to kind of put it out there really properly. Which is, I now understand why men do it, and I think I understand through the history of autism and what that teaches us about people, and through sort of studying politics, why this would be the case for women. Which is that I've seen, you know, people on the internet, and my own sister has said this, that, you know, women do not dress up for men, they dress up for other women. They dress up for them. In other words, the reason we live in a society that still sexually objectifies women is because women like it that way. We have ended up in a society that has conditioned women to accept that this is how they should be, right? And you know, I noticed this when I was creating, you know, William Dixon Wright, you know, the Chronicles of William Dixon Wright. You know, the whole arc of the first, you know, series of Green Eyed Nothing is surrounding the great conspiracy that he set up, designed to turn women into the perfect male playthings. And how do you do it? Through so many of the things that happen now. And, like, I had the kind of an idea of why it happened, but I now know for definite that it's happening, right? This isn't just, you know, this isn't just some moron who doesn't know. I now get it. Which is that, first off, culture is built on culture. No ideas are entirely new, right? You know, yes, there is the dreadnought class, right? You know, the dreadnought class actually is a fantastic example of like how ideas are built on top of other ideas. In that, essentially, when the dreadnought class was being, you know, built, you know, the Navy had a bit of a cash flow problem, and they were like, okay, we can't necessarily afford technological advancements, so what can we do now, knowing what we know now, using the technology that we can afford now? And what you have is a ship that is heads and shoulders above all the other, you know, above all the other competition of the time, right? The dreadnought is amazing because all these different advancements that happened, where it was like, you know, well, we want to make it do this, so we need to add this to this, and then once we've got this, we can do that, but then we need to add this to this, and then we need to do that, so then we need to do this. And it's like, every time you basically create just as much as you need to get to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. And so you notice this in, like, the difference between, the best way to sort of explain this, and sort of how this is so ingrained, is to look at Minecraft, okay? Because Minecraft has a leveling system. It has an intuitive leveling system, right? In the sense that you start off, you know, you punch trees, you get wood, and from that wood you create wooden tools, and then you create stone tools, and then you create iron tools, and then maybe you create gold tools, and then you create diamond tools, right? It's got a tier. It's got a crafting tier, it's got, you know, a tier of improvements that can be made as you gain experience with the game. Like, say, a role-playing game, like Skyrim. Except the difference is, Skyrim locks it. You can't gain the other perks until you have done the earlier perks. In Minecraft, if you know what you're doing, you can say, fuck this, I'm just gonna punch one tree, get enough wood to get myself some, get myself enough wood to get myself a pickaxe, and then go down diamond. I mean, it's not quite as simple as that, because, like, you do need a stone pick to do, you know, iron, and then to do diamond, but, like, it is this thing that you witness whenever nerds who know what they're doing are let loose with a relative sandbox and a set of rules, right? They start saying, okay, this is the most powerful thing, how do I get there in the straightest route? That doesn't happen in the real world, right? And indeed, that is why I am very interested to know what the fuck is going to happen to China when the sort of the post scarcity when the capitalist bubble bursts and post scarcity happens upon the world, right? Like, what happens when their manufacturing industry is swallowed up by technology, right? How do you go from, you know, like, from the wooden pick to suddenly dying, right? It's like, woof! How are you going to deal with that? Everything builds up on top of everything else, and everything builds everything else, everything else, everything else, everything else. And kind of, we can see, to a certain extent, the chain of this building on top of things, 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 through the different religions that are still following texts laid down at certain times. Like, I mean, this is why I'm actually very glad Britain does not have a written constitution, because basically, anytime you write something down, it becomes dated fast, right? And we can witness culture built on such dated rules and see how society changed. So, you know, obviously there were wars were fought over this, but, you know, there are differences between Islam and Christianity, but we can, to a certain extent, say, right, at least, you know, based on things like the Victorian stuff, that, you know, there was a time when women wore, and they started to wear less, partly as a result of women's liberation. But how do we go from women wearing less to this kind of sexualization disparity, right? Because we do now live in a time where women dress up in clothing that is sexually there is a sexual disparity, right? In the way the sort of the clothing is presented and stuff. You know, women have to look good a heck of a lot more than men, right? Men, nobody really cares about, right? And part of this is that basically women have had to fight a fuck of a lot harder than men throughout society, right? You know, they have had to exploit every little tiny edge they've got, right? In the sense that, no, capitalism required the controlling of women. It also starts to incentivize getting women to do your jobs, because women are controlled, so you can pay them less. Right? And so, you know, women will want the jobs because, hey, women's liberation, I wanted to get a job, right? But yeah, we're going to mistreat you and we're going to pay you less. Right? This is capitalist incentivization that is, you know, helping women, but also kind of making them sick. Like, it's complicated. And part of this sort of, you know, complication sort of factor is the fact that, yes, women, you know, want to show off more, they want to look good, but part of the way they look good, you know, is determined through men, right? And it's, you know, determined through advertising agencies saying, how do we get men to give a shit about what we're selling? Well, what do men like? Men like women. Let's have women. What's fashionable for women? Let's just not have them wearing very many clothes. Or if we have to have them wearing clothes, let's have them wearing tight clothes. Right? And really, that's as simple as it gets to a certain extent, right? You know, basically, when you get, by the time the 1950s, 1960s come around, it's like, yay, capitalism, democracy, freedom, baby, sexual objectification of women, because it'll sell, and men like women. And really, right, yes, men like women. They do. And I understand that now. I fully, completely and utterly understand now why it is that we are still finding it so hard to have better roles for women, because it's just like, guys, you can't let men do this. You cannot let men write women. They will not do it well. Right? You have to have a culture whereby, like, you have to have a culture whereby it is very much expected that men have to treat women with a certain amount of respect in order to be able to write women in a certain kind of way. Right? You need to have women writing at least half. Right? You need to have women writing a lot more, so that they are putting their fingerprints across things, because it's, you know, it's like this effect that they've seen that, you know, a street that is littered is going to become more littered. If you see that there is mess on the ground, you think, oh, well, we throw mess on the ground here. if you see that, you know, if you see, oh, well, this channel lets you show off women and whoa, oh, yeah, right? You're gonna write things with that mentality. If you see that this channel shows, well, you know, women are strong and powerful, and you know, you don't want to fuck with them, right? You know, we witness this in internet forums, you know, the filter bubbles, right? The filter bubbles are just a much faster effect of what goes on in society, right? In the sense that, you know, you say, oh, well, we're not going to change much, we're going to be very moderate, and then you just have a slow tipping balance of, well, we've got all these people and they're feeling very uncomfortable, so we're just going to tip more in this direction, but we've got all these people and they really want to talk about this. And it's a bit unfair on them for us to, you know, impose against them, so we're just going to go a bit in this direction. and And it really is as simple, I think, as kind of like men naturally just going, I am experiencing that right now. Just brain going, women, don't care, women. I mean, for God's sake, Ivanka Trump, right? Like, that's, like, from my political perspective, that's like Hitler's daughter, right? That's the devil's fucking daughter. No, 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 you, no, 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 bad man, you do not. No, 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 but the dick says yes. Yeah, there are reasons I'm scared of feminists, and that may be one of my God. But the dick says yes. Sorry. I'm stupid. I'm very stupid. I'm not entirely sure what's gotten into me. But I understand why men can't do this. I understand why men can't quite, you know, I understand the momentum here, right? You can't let good men be what pushes things over the edge. Because we've got penises. We've got penises, we've got testosterone, we just can't do it. You know, there is a drag factor, right? Like, yes, you want your women to have interesting stories, right? Yes, you can have better education as to, you know, women's biology and, you know, menstruation and all of this stuff, you know, like, you can teach this stuff in such a way that men grow up better informed with less fucked up ideas about women. But at the end of the day, testosterone will hit them like a truck and they are just gonna go, yeah, but they're hot. So we're just gonna have lesbians and they're gonna be, yeah, lesbians and yeah, oh yeah, let's just have them bathing, yeah, and have that in the shower, or and bending down in a really tight dress. Like, men are not the people who can drive a feminist future, right? So you know, like, they have to, right? It is absolutely our fault, but kind of, we need feminism to be cracking the whip. And it has been cracking the whip. But the reason it's not necessarily having quite as much of an effect as it maybe necessarily could be is because of cultural momentum, patriarchal momentum. Because, you know, I mean, maybe this is just, you know, like, seeing patterns and things like that, right? But You know, once you notice something, you see it everywhere, right? I am obviously someone who, due to my fetishes and the fact that testosterone is running through my veins quite, yeah, I'm interested in submissive women, and I know some. And it's almost amazing quite how many of my female friends are submissive women. I probably shouldn't have said that, but because I've got Nazi stalkers. But it's kind of relevant to this discussion, and I think I'm being vague enough. But yeah, you do notice this, that like there is a momentum here. It's not as simple as stuff, you know. It's like we've got the rules, we've got the regulations, and yet women are still saying, you know what, I want to dress to show off my body, and women are still saying, you know what, I want a guy to dominate me. And I mean, look at Twilight, look at 50 Shades of Grey, right? Women are still buying this stuff. They still like this stuff, you know. And there is, and again, right here, I can feel myself sort of struggling against this. Like, there are things I want to say, and you know, the testosterone coup is taking place as this guy is saying, why you having a problem with this? The women are glorious and beautiful, and how dare you take that away? They want to be this way. How dare you? Because it's not so fucking simple. It's not so fucking simple. Why do we like things? You know? Why do we dress this way or that way? Why do we like this food or that food? Why do these things appeal to us? Well, why do you think so many people pay for fucking advertising? Because what you're exposed to influences you. It makes a difference. Because autistic people have a phenomenon known as echolalia. It means that they learn language through parroting, right? They might know the context, but they don't know the individual words and meanings. They just know, I make this sound in relation to that thing, then it makes that thing happen. Humans do not make decisions without context, right? You know, the whole reason fashion exists is because having a context to decide what looks good matters, right? And how do I know that there is such a bias, that there is such a difference? Because of the way my sister tricked me, right? the way she treats me, the way she looks upon me and goes, what the fuck are you doing? I can't go out with you dressed like that. There is a very definite difference in expectations for men and for women, right? And I know I'm at the particularly thin end of the wedge when it comes to men, in the sense that I don't give a shit, right? And even when I did give a shit, I dressed in suits. But like, the point is even when men dress sexy, they don't dress female sexy, right? I mean, the very fact that it's, you know, drag queens and, you know, transvesticism, right? You know, I actually kind of envy women the fact that women have fashion. That means they have capitalism incentivizing new designs. So they have interesting coats, they have interesting clothes. Men, it's just, so what sort of shirt, pullover, or whatever. It's basically what kind of basic generic piece of clothing in shades white, blue, black, or green would you like? Sort of the closest men get to fashion is, what sort of branding would you like on your shirt, sir? Right? Meanwhile, women have got all of these, well, it's this pattern and that pattern, and you've got these sorts of layering and this sort of thing, and there's that, and it's like, I look at the fashion shows and I'm like, how do what? Like, my brain just, that person looks like a peacock. How is this clothing? But that's how they work. The fashion industry is throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, and that's why women clothes look more interesting. Sorry, mini defense of why I would like to wear a lady's jacket, but I mean, obviously, it would have to be built for someone very fucking huge. I mean, I've got the tits, but I am goddamn huge. Unfortunately, not in the areas I'd like. But yeah, you don't see billboards for men's stuff with them in sports trunks, or even, you know, in bikinis. We don't have the same level of equality in sexual objectification, because men don't give a shit, and advertisers know men don't give a shit, and because sales show men don't give a shit, right? But women do, and they have done, and there is still an economic advantage to women dressing a certain way, looking a certain way, right? Basically, the entirety of the makeup industry exists because women feel bad about their bodies, right? There are so many different industries that, like, I think this guy CGP Grey I listened to, you know, he's described before that, like, what would happen if you just wiped out all history of the world overnight. And I feel like if that happened, that, you know, if we started again with no preconceptions, no cultural history of X, Y, or Z, that, you know, that we would have designs that were functional, practical, and that appealed to a certain kind of aesthetic, but uniformly across the sexes. Right? You know, maybe you'd have, oh well, these clothes look better on smaller people. These clothes look better on, you know, people with broader shoulders, right? But it wouldn't be so strictly, you wouldn't have, you know, women wearing the tight jeans, men wearing baggy stuff. You wouldn't have that level of, you know, women are objects, men are slops. Because we have cultural momentum. Because all of these capitalistic forces are still playing a part. Because men can't quite stop leaning in favour of sexual objectification. And because men and because women have grown up in a world where sexual objectification of women was always the norm. And because when you're used to it, right, I mean, it's like anything, you know, there are good ways and bad ways to do things, right? And, you know, and what is defined as good and bad is culturally defined as well. You know, to a certain extent, it's how someone looks. Can you see their expressions? Right? From a purely utilitarian point of view, there is a certain level of looks, right? There is a utilitarian level of hygiene, which I arguably fail. There is a utilitarian level to how people look. The rest is cultural, right? I mean, yeah, it's like, you know, my mother and my sister are scared of buttons. I'm now imagining just, you know, some troll saying, "I will send you a box full of buttons." Ah! But you know, I'm not scared of buttons. I don't think I'm scared of any sort of thing of clothing, to be honest. Of course, now they'll be like, okay, what kind of thing of clothing can we buy him? Balaclava, it's associated with thugs. They'll totally hate that. Just send me Freddy Jason's mask in the mail. Freddy, what are you doing? That is how much of a fucking white bread virginal nerd I am. Freddy Jason. Not Freddy Krueger. Not Jason. Just Freddy Jason. Yes. Oh, I really am losing it. Sorry, but you know, there are individual preferences, but that will have an effect on how people dress. But also, a lot of it is just cultural. You know, I dress practically, right? Like, I like certain colors because culture. I like certain modes of dress because utility. I like to wear suits because of Doctor Who, right? Like, that is what made me get interested in suits, and once I got interested in suits, I got nerdy about it, but culture plays a huge important part in fashion, and fashion plays a huge important part in the media, and the media plays a huge important part in how we treat people. And I think we are at a point now where there is enough equality that the drag coefficient of sort of the penis in in marketing, in the media, in all of this stuff, means that men can't push this forward. So it has to be women saying, do we really need to advertise our clothing stores using, skinny women in bikinis? Do we really need to have such figure hugging, clothes for the women? Do we really need that? I mean, yes, we are seeing advertising firms begin to push this shit onto men and say, well, you should buy our aftershave. Well, you should buy our clothes because we're cool and sexy, and you should groom in a certain way. And it's like, no, it's not gonna work. And the reason it's not going to work is that basically the reason with so much effort, so much importance is placed on how women look is because basically throughout a large part of pop culture, the women's value was determined by how they looked, right? Because the men controlled the women, and as a man, you like how the woman looks. You maybe don't give a shit what she says. And, to be honest, at a certain, time period in history, if the woman has a voice, it's going to be saying, what the fuck are you doing? You are a complete bastard. So you don't want them to speak. So therefore, you have a history of women sitting there looking pretty. And so therefore, there is a lot of incentive for the women to look pretty darn pretty. Whereas the men generally we've always had to show we've always had to show off and achieve how men in the media and in society and in dating and what have you that there is this expectation that we are judged on something we've done, right? I mean, it's a thing that is often criticized about the media, that, why is a man always having his motivation be women? The fact that essentially the entire Lord of the Rings storyline is essentially Aragorn's "Can I please marry your daughter?" quest, right? It's like, please, sir, may I fuck your daughter? Right? That's basically what the Lord of the Rings is for Aragorn. It's just like, please, Aragorn, I want some pussy. Let me have some pussy. Fine, I'll become king. I'll fucking show you. I mean, obviously, all this importance is going along, but this is kind of why men are frustrated nowadays, right? Is the sense that like women are just like, oh yeah, I feel good, yeah, look at me, I'm feeling so awesome, and men are just like, well, I guess women like cocks. Should I send them a picture of my cock? Maybe I should just have a really big cock. As men, we don't have a history of sexual objectification, and so we always have to strive to be measured on, we are the smartest, we are the bravest, we are we can kill the most people, we can make the best sandwiches, we have to justify ourselves in other ways and means. And, again, this is all based on, sort of on sort of capitalistic exploitation and oppression and sort of women being shat upon. But this is why we are at this odd point now in society whereby, we're still sexually objectifying women, but women aren't necessarily fighting back against it as hard as they could be because they're playing into the cycle of sexual objectification because, well, I'm dressing for me. And at the same time, men are just sort of withering on the vine a bit and just like becoming bitter because they want to get an edge up. They want to be able to go out there and become sexually objectified, but society just isn't built for it. Like, the closest we come to sexual objectification is Flaw. He's really fit. Like, you know, for a man to look good, we sort of take utilitarianism to an art form, quite literally. It's like, you know, Chris Pratt looks hot because he looks like he could kick ass. You know. There isn't, like, women, we like women because they're dainty, they're fragile, they're soft, there's an elegance and an adorableness and a vulnerability, and with men it's just, he looks like he could hit a thing real hard. Like, bro, how much do you lift, bro? You know, it's like, with women, oh yes, she's like a wood nymph. She's so gentle and thin. She looks like you could blow over in the breeze and you'd break her. And it's like all this artsy poems, and with men, it's just, how much do you lift? How much do you bench press? Do you skip leg day? I should say I never wrote poetry, and I've always been crap at poetry. But and I'm not saying I have the solution, right? Because I feel like cultural momentum is a bit like neoliberalism, and it's just sort of got to play out, right? Patriarchal momentum, it's just kind of got to play out. Like, at a certain point, you know, women and men have just kind of got to, you know, say, okay, let's fuck it, let's just have proper fucking equality at last. Because, you know what? Men genuinely, I think, do want to have, you know, the sort of the male equivalent of the little black dress, you know. You know, men want pulling gear, basically, right? You know, we don't necessarily want to go on a year-long, you know, sort of training montage in order to be able to stand a chance at pulling girls. Because, frankly, girls can, to a certain extent, just say, and today I wear my good trousers. It's just like, and today I shall wear my tight clothes. Oh, look, all the men. You know, the woman goes out in a bikini. I mean, okay, yes. Fatties are equally discriminated against. But there's still, you know, there needs to be a middle ground, right? Men are crying out for some kind of universal, easy way to be sexually objectified, right? They want a way to look good easily to the opposite sex in a way that will make the opposite sex want to jump their fucking bones, right? And I imagine it's true of, you know, gay men as well, you know. Like, how can I dress so that you will want to fuck me? I mean, I suppose being a bisexual man, my answer is, well, I want to pull Doctor Who bloke, so I dress up as Doctor Who. But I don't know, suits maybe, I don't know. I don't know anything. I am not a fashionista. I am not a feminist academic, and I am not a fashionista. What I am is a fucked up boy who is sort of a warped understanding of stuff that I think gives me a unique perspective. But yeah, that's my sort of daft theory. And basically, the entire reason I made this was because in an hour, I should be expecting a Sainsbury's delivery. So I wanted to be up for it. And I am up for it. So yay. Fuck it, I'm gonna upload this as a 3-hour long video. But yeah. Patriarchal Momentum. What are we gonna do about it, eh? I genuinely don't know. I can say a thing if it exists, I can't necessarily talk about what we do about it. Hi, so before we begin proper, let's define terms. You know what? I might actually make that whole 40 minute thing just like an unlisted video connected to this one, because like if you want to know why my opinion matters, it'll be there. If you don't care, it's fine. You don't have to look at it. At the least, I will probably have a message saying 40 minutes in, whatever. Okay, so let's define terms. So, what is the patriarchy? And again, right, I am not a feminist scholar. I am not going to pretend like I can be a feminist academic. I am not going to debate the terms and what have you, right? I will gladly discuss well, no, I won't, because I don't go into the comments, but like debate surrounding the idea, discussing the idea, yeah, right? And if any of my actual friends are watching this video, I will discuss, you know, sort of the idea itself, but not necessarily like, well, does capitalism exist though? Does the patriarchy exist though? Because guys, this is partly inspired by the fact that basically, due to my sort of complex past that I sort of alluded to, I once got into I fairly recently got into this situation whereby I made a crack about how feminists don't always know everything, and this guy was agreeing with me, and I was like, yeah, you know what, I think sometimes the anti-feminists have a point, but I've grown past that. And then this guy basically went further and further until he basically revealed that he was a sort of a misogynist denialist, in the sense that he not only denied that feminism was needed in the 21st century, he denied that that feminism had ever been needed, that men had ever in any way mistreated women, right? Which is just bullshit, right? Like I cannot give you a sort of feminist, you know, academics perspective on what capitalism is. You can tell how much I've been fucking worrying about the future of capitalism, can't you? You can fucking tell how much I have been freaking the shit out about the future of capitalism. Sorry, I am not an academic on. I am not an academic scholar on on feminism and the patriarchy, right? I cannot give you a sort of feminist academics description of what the patriarchy is. I cannot give you a feminist academics sort of ideas of, you know, when the patriarchy was at its peak and all of this stuff. But suffice to say, right, this is the sort of I suppose anti-feminist, reformed feminist, aspiring feminist perspective on what the patriarchy is and what I understand it to be, and that's that the patriarchy is the system and set of systems and ideas and motivations passed down from generation to generation that ensure society is rigged in favor of the men at the expense of the women, right? And I suppose also part of the reason that I have been talking about capitalism non-stop when talking about patriarchy is that actually, when it comes down to it, patriarchy, as we know it today, exists because of capitalism. Okay. And it exists because of capitalism, because basically back in the dim and distant days of yore, if you were going to have property, that meant you wanted to pass your property on to your kids. That meant you needed to know who your kids were. That meant you needed to control the women. And yeah, I suppose the question is, why is it that that men ended up controlling the women? You know, people might be able to look at well, gender dimorphism. The women looked after the babies. You know, they were taken out of action for 9 months, so the men had to go out and do the foraging. So they were more likely to have stronger builds, and evolution took place, and so they got bigger, bulkier and bulkier, and women were less able to go out and do the physically demanding stuff, so societal roles adapted so that they did this and that, and evolution spun off and spun off and spun off, right? That's one theory that suggests that sort of men controlled women, or were in a position to control women because just, you know, gender dimorphism. But if it was as simple as that, then what you'd expect is that kind of almost sexual oppression would be an evolutionarily, you know, encountered phenomenon. Like, it would be bred into us to be sexist. Although, of course, there is the counter, you know, element to that, which is that whilst, you know, the men might be physically stronger, the women, it's almost socialist in a way, you know, seizing the means of production. The women are the means of production, right? And it's like, you know, part of the reason I became anti-feminist and then I suppose became feminist again, and then became, you know, interested in war, is because essentially there are parts of the animal kingdom where gender dimorphism took a very different slant, because the females control the means of production. So there are literally spiders that like the men will climb inside the women, climb inside their mouths, whilst having sex with them, and literally like rub themselves up against the gum saying, oh yeah, have a chew on me, baby, have a chew, how do I taste? You know, hop back outside, you know, do a little bit of extra sexual work before, you know, finishing off to be finished off. So yeah, like spiders are one kind of, you know, example of how gender dimorphism, yeah, really is not necessarily an indicator that that sexism is inbred. And indeed, you know, whilst I'm, you know, not a feminist academic in any way, shape, or form, there does seem to be a considerable amount of discourse regarding the fact that basically until capitalism came along and men needed to control women, that basically societies, you know, we didn't have the 2.4 children, we weren't patriarchal, that we kind of just, everybody sort of mucked in and stuff. And part of it's also just like to do with technology, right? But like, you know, when we were hunter-gatherers who only had so big communities and like evolution would kill us off, you know, evolution almost being capitalism in its most pure and innate, right? In the sense that kind of you either succeed or you die, right? And so before, you know, you didn't need capitalism, you didn't need control over women's bodies, you didn't need the family unit and stuff, when things could be fluid, when you could just, you know, kick someone out, if someone could just leave if they had a problem, right? You could have a kind of, you know, communist style thing of everybody just talking things out until they agree, because you've basically got the choices of, you know, where you're gonna go for your hunting and your grazing. Right? You don't have many choices, so you can spend the entire day discussing them, right? And, you know, and the people who don't like it, well, they can go off and they can do their own stuff, right? But with technology came the ability to create better resources, plenty, more produce, you know. We could have buildings, we could have comforts and furniture, but that meant we needed organizing, you know. And you get, you know, bigger and bigger communities of people, and then, you know, these communities of people become cities, and they reach a certain size and scale, and it's like, okay, we need a sanitary system, okay, we need some kind of police force, okay, we need an army. Like, you know, it's a thing whereby technology brings greater prosperity, but it also brings greater need to organize. And with the need to organize comes human bias, human greed, and human power fucking with the system. And so when you have a system that is already dependent upon knowing which woman came out of what, but maybe at the same time, like, if you are the woman, right, you control what happens. You are the means of production. That means you get controlled, right? You are the thing that, you are the trophy that is won, right? You are not the thing that does the thing. You are not the thing that does the winning, because apart from anything else, If you are the means of production, you have to spend it being the means of production. And you cannot be being the means of production if you end up getting killed because you decide that you're going to go off and conquer the country or whatever. So what I guess I'm kind of saying here is that it's a very good thing Daenerys Targaryen decided not to have any more kids. Like, I've got these dragons, I'm set, right? Conquer the world, then have kids, women. At least if you're talking about the days before proper pain medication and pain medication, like, all these different advances, cesarean sections and what have you, for, if there's problems with the babies. Again, I'm showing ignorant ass man here, right? But technology enabled a lot of things. It also facilitated the control of women. And men, because they weren't out of action, the women were busy being the means of production, so the men seized the means of production. And they controlled the means of production. And women were the means of production. And so I don't know how this exactly came about. I don't know how it was at its peak. But suffice to say, women were very, very controlled. And this is the patriarchy, right? The women are controlled, so the men can move about society. Princesses are shipped off, are married off to different, rulers of different families. This is how we secure our alliances. We send you our women so you may impregnate them, right? It's almost hostages, right? Sorry. Also, weirdly like zoos. That's what I was just thinking. Because there was an episode of Hello Internet about the zoos. So it was clearly very sexist, and women didn't have the vote, and there was all this kind of horrible stuff, right? All this horrible stuff that kind of, unless you are a flat out, historical denialist who's like, no, feminism has never been needed because women have always been equal, unless you are literally just wrong, right? Then yeah, there was a time when the patriarchy was a genuinely terrifying force of oppression, right? And it still continues to this day, but some of the ways it continues are kind of ambiguous, right? In the sense that, we are so many, feminist or pseudo-feminist uprisings from those bad times, right? The suffragette movement, the women's liberation movement, and what have you. Margaret Thatcher happened. I mean, okay, I know I'm a left-wing guy, and Margaret Thatcher politically had a lot of problems, but the fact that she basically turned up and said, no, I can be a complete bastard as well. You don't need a penis to be a complete cock. That we live in a very different age, I suppose the biggest impact that Margaret Thatcher had was that Margaret Thatcher showed to the bastards of Britain that actually women are pretty darned awesome, right? Like, I suppose really that's why from the 80s onwards we have had a massive increase in gender equality, is because, I mean, yes, we had or we did have so much progress that was, you know, made on the backs of all these people fighting for equality. And, you know, there were undoubtedly, you know, in the 80s, horrible things going on, and, you know, minorities, you know, suffering and making a stand and paying the price, and sort of standing up for liberty. You know, I'm thinking of like the Stonewall riots and stuff like this, you know, where people who the sort of the patriarchy or whatever disagreed with were making a stand and, you know, kicking for space, and quite fucking rightly so. But at the same time, they did take casualties. You know, they paid the price. They achieved a lot, but I, you know, Margaret Thatcher sort of winning the hearts and minds of the Conservative faithful by delivering such a crushing blow to the left. I think that has done an awful lot for women's equality, right? In the sense that, you know, very much when Margaret Thatcher got elected, it was, good God, man, she's a girl, right? I mean, obviously, to a certain extent, that's, you know, maybe pushing it a bit strong, but we still live in a world where, you know, the vast majority of elected leaders are white men, right? And this is the thing, we're in this world now where we've got democracy, we've got capitalism, and we've got, you know, pseudo-socialism. We've got, you know, petitions and protests and, you know, all these laws designed to encourage women to have better representation at this place and that place, and yet the world still looks very sexist, right? Indeed, it arguably looks more sexist now than it perhaps is, right? I mean, maybe that's just a, you know, a case of the fact that, you know, I'm a man, so I'm only seeing the world through the internet, right? And obviously, I've got this unique kind of, well, not unique, but I have this perspective of, like, you know, Nazis on the one hand, but then feminists terrifying the crap out of me on the other hand. And so maybe for me, I'm getting a different perspective on how things are in society. But, like, practically speaking, legally speaking, we are, at least on paper, legally, theoretically, a very equal society. It's just that we aren't really in practice, right? Legally speaking, legally speaking, you know, on paper, we are an incredibly equal society. Practically speaking, we're not. You look at the world, go for a walk down shops, right? There are, I mean, I noticed it today, and part of the reason I noticed it is, like, I needed to have gone from thinking everybody was, you know, equal and not having testosterone to having been an anti-feminist, now being a feminist, and now sort of experiencing the sort of testosterone coup, to kind of notice the women in the world. Sorry, not the women in the world, but to notice this stuff, right? To notice this stuff and to notice what's wrong. Which is that, in Woking Town Centre, there are billboards up of women's clothing where women go to buy stuff, right? It is them. It is their, these are stores designed for women that, presumably, at least at a certain kind of high level, women have a fair bit of say. And, certainly they're popular with women because, they're a shop. They're a retail store in 2017. They have to be fairly popular. And, they've got great big billboards of gorgeous women in bikinis, and right opposite them is a men's store, and the men are also dressed in suits or what have you, and it's like, there's a disparity there, right? Because yes, we are seeing in the media the beginnings of kind of equality of sexual objectification, right? We are seeing in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that, oh yes, there are some damn fine sexy men out there, and, this is where I, as a bisexual, am just... right, yes, I will die cold and alone, but I will live a very happy life. Look at all this eye candy. We are in this world where we are now starting to see equality of sexual objectification, and yet we're not quite there yet. So, having spent about 30 minutes building up, I am gonna go and get more squash because I'm hot. I'm really hot and also quite tired. I literally went for a walk into Woking, which is what inspired this. And as I'm quite, I've been up for a while. I'm quite tired, so I'm gonna take another break, and then I will see you in a moment in a job cut. Thank you for watching my main channel. Please remember to leave a like, favourite and comment. Shout out to the dislike club. Subscribe if you like what you saw, and share if you know someone who might be interested in the contents of this video. If you would like to help ensure more videos get made, there are a few options available to you. You can whitelist this channel in your adblock software to ensure what ad revenue you provide has a chance of making its way to me. If you sign up to make a regular monthly donation through my Patreon, then you will get to watch a selection of videos available exclusively to my Patreon supporters over at my Patreon page. One-off donations are payable through PayPal, or if that doesn't suit your sensibilities, you can gift items through Steam or Amazon via my public wish lists. Obviously, I don't expect anything, and the vast majority of my videos will remain free and ad-supported. All that remains is to say Trump should be impeached, the genocidal must be stopped, and institute universal basic income now.